Hello again, it's Noob, and it's time to do another review for Banggood.com. Um, so Banggood have asked me whether I'd like to do some reviews for them, and I said yes, and I get to choose what I review, which is good because it means I can do a bit of research first. Now, what am I reviewing today? Well, I'm not reviewing these items, although I think they're quite nice. Banggood don't sell these, but they do sell what made them, which is a 3D printer. So don't worry, my channel is always going to be lock sport related. It's not going to be a 3D printer channel, but 3D printing has matured as a medium to the point where you can now buy printers which will enable you to print 3D objects relatively quickly and out of the box. In fact, the printer that I am going to review for you in a second, the JGAURORA A3S, did these prints, and I'll go into a bit more detail about those in a minute. But I just have to say that I'm not a 3D printer expert. So although I'm curious about 3D printing and I really wanted to explore a 3D printer, just because the a range of lock sport items out there which you can print now is growing and growing and growing day by day. There are pinning trays, plug followers, pick handles. There are front loading devices. There are just a multitude of things. And of course, if you have a 3D printer, if you're creative like I think I am, it gives the opportunity to make your own items and own designs. But I had some narrow criteria. If I was going to do a 3D printer review, not being an expert, I wanted a 3D printer which wasn't inordinately expensive. I wanted a printer which, on research, seemed to be easy to use, because I'm not going to be wielding a soldering iron anytime soon, I can tell you that. And seemed to come with everything I needed to do out of the box printing. And with my research, seemed to do good resolution prints, because I'm fussy with the aesthetic things. I want something which actually looks good at the end of the day. Okay, so this review is going to be in multiple parts. I think we'll go now and have a look at the printer, and I'll talk to you about the setup and specifications. So here it is. This is the JGAURORA A3S 3D printer. It's a metal construction. It has a single extruder, which is just here. The build size is actually 205 by 205 by 205 millimeters, or just over 20 centimeters in all three dimensions, which is quite large. The precision is from the extruder nozzle is 0.1 millimeters to 0.3 millimeters. So we're talking about relatively good resolution from a commercial printer. It has offline USB printing, which for me is excellent. I don't have to trail cables anywhere. I basically print to a file on the USB stick, put that in, press go, and it'll print it to the settings which I've defined. The print speed itself, in terms of how fast it can lay down layers of medium, usually PLA, is 10 to 150 millimeters a second. The nozzle diameter is 0.4 millimeters, and the nozzle temperature can go up to 250 degrees centigrade. The recommended consumable filament on this is PLA, although it can print according to its own criteria on the website, ABS and other mediums too. But PLA has become sort of the de facto medium for print, so that's what I've been using. It takes a filament diameter, again very common, 1.75 millimeters. The recommended filament type, like I said, is PLA, and you can use file formats like STL, OBJ and G-code. The voltage it takes in is 110 to 230 volts, so that's good for those of us living in Europe especially, and the UK, where we have a 230 volt supply. And the software it comes with, which is Cura and JG Create, which I'll talk about in a second, are compatible with Windows 7, XP, Vista, Linux and Mac. I've got Windows 10 and that's working fine for me too. The working conditions are 5 to 40 degrees centigrade, which is pretty much all standard inside temperatures. And they recommend no humidity range of between 20 and 50 degrees, sort of 50% for a good print quality. In terms of dimensions, this is sat on top of a standard size filing cabinet. So we're talking in terms of the overall dimensions of 431 by 370 by 423 millimeters. I would suggest you go to the Banggood website, following the links in the description, and have a look at all of that yourself. The cost of this whole thing is actually, I think at the moment it's on sale, is at £270, which for something which aesthetically looks so nice, I think you'll agree is very cheap for this type of printer. It's got a standard RRP of £366, but again the prices change on a day-to-day basis depending on all sorts of currency fluctuations, etc. So please go check out the website itself, and go to the description and have a look to see whether there are any discount codes as well. Right, I think next we're going to look at the setup of this, how quick it is to set up, and then we'll move on to software. So, setting up the printer was actually really easy. It's only got three parts. The base unit, which has the heated tray on it, the print assembly, and over at the back here is just a spool holder. Spool holder took 3 screws, the base took 4 screws, and altogether took about 10 minutes. It really was easy, and it actually comes with all the tools you need. And I just have to say, I thought this was really nice. It comes with an extra extruder, which I think is really good that it comes with a couple of extra little things for you there, and some spare screws. So 10 minutes to set up. In the box, aside from a CD with, of course, a user manual on it and the printer software, there is also a small piece of acetate which is used for getting some distance between the nozzle and the base plate as part of a calibration. The plate itself is actually something they call black diamond, and it doesn't need any adhesion tape or any other preparation on it. I've been doing 3D prints on this with rafts and with brims with no adhesion problems at all. Once you dial in the temperatures for the bed and the extruder nozzle, I've not had any issues. So I quite like the fact that I don't have to mess around with any weird tape on this printer. Anyway, I mentioned software, so let's move over and actually have a look at the type of software that comes with it. I mentioned that there's something called Cura, which you might be familiar with, and JGAURORA, which you might not be. So, onto software. What you're seeing in front of you, and I've tried to get it as much in frame as I can, is Cura. Cura is one of those pieces of software for slicing a 3D model, essentially making it into a printable file, which is very commonly used in the 3D printing world as far as I can tell. What you're seeing here is, like I said, a version of Cura that comes with the printer. Very detailed, and I think this gives you an awful lot of control. It gives you lots of menu settings from basic to advanced, even allows you to put plugins in there and view the G code itself, which is part of that printing file. You can see I've got a model of a robot here, and this model comes with the software CD that comes with the A3S printer, and I think it's quite a good little test. It's not quite an extreme torture test, but it's a good test of all sorts of things like overhangs on the ears, fine detail on the chest, flat surfaces, and spikes, which will test retraction and stringing. So I have printed this out. Bear that model in mind. I'd like to see it later so you can see the print quality. So that is Cura, but we also have something called JGAURORA, which might not look quite as fancy, but I actually use this. This seems to use I don't know for sure, but it seems to use some of the assets from Cura, or it's very, very similar. It's just a slightly different layout. So I found it a tiny bit more intuitive. And the idea is that you would go in, make all your changes, and by the way, you can close down what you want to see in terms of these settings. So, you know, if you only use a few settings, you don't have to have all of them there. If you want more resolution, like for example, I have turned off the fan until layer 3, for example. If you want to do start the fan at layer 0 or 10, you can do that too. It still gives you the base plate and support options if you want to display that. It's got infill density, all those kind of things. But if you just want to use a straight out of the box recommended setting, you can still put support and adhesion on there and choose your infill density. That is also there for you as well. So I just found the JG Create software particularly useful, and that's one which I think I'd recommend using first, and then going on to Cura, and then looking between the two to see which one you feel more comfortable with. Once you've set everything up, you literally just click Save to removable drive or file, stick it on USB port, and put it into the printer. Let's go over now to the actual printer. I'll show you how it turns on, sets up for a print run, and then we'll look at a print run. So let me turn the printer on and take you through some of the settings on the interface. Now, one thing I'd say is that it's surprisingly quick to boot up. There you go, it's booted up, and it's actually quite quiet from what I can tell in terms of 3D printers, from what I've heard before. I'm going to keep it on so you can hear the fan in the background, so you can see what sorts of volumes it reaches. So I'm not going to show you things like leveling and loading the PLA and doing all those kind of things, because I don't want to make this a how to do 3D printing video. But in terms of the actual interface, I'll whiz through some of these settings. So that heat allows you to do the heated bed. So this is a preheat for the extruder there, or the bed. You can increase the temperature of that, or just turn it all off. And the idea is, of course, is that what you want to do is you want to preheat the bed if you want to fast print when you finish slicing your 3D file. If you don't, then obviously those settings are carried over in the print file, but it'll take longer to warm up. Move is as you'd expect. This moves the printer by whatever degree you want in steps on the X, Y, and Z axes. So that lifts the print armature up and down. Home is one of the most important buttons, because that, and you can probably hear it now centering to home, it tells it where to start from. I always start a print run from home, because that means the printer knows where it is and where it should start printing. In terms of the interface, I just have to say that this is very colourful, it's very usable, but it doesn't quite have that kind of sensitivity a smartphone interface would have, for example. It's a little bit more soft to the touch. It's very hard to describe, but it's not quite so responsive as maybe you might just be used to. We've got extrusion here, so we can extrude in and out of the nozzle. We can manually change the speed and things like that. I don't tend to use this. I do all this in the printer settings normally. In terms of leveling, again, this assists you in leveling the bed. It's got 5 positions in each of the quarters of the bed itself and the center, and you use a piece of, I'm dropping it, acetate that the printer comes with to provide a distance between the extruder nozzle and the bed. Tip: make sure that whilst there is a space between the bed and the extruded nozzle, by using that acetate, make sure that it's relatively close to make sure that that first layer of PLA really bonds to the black diamond bed plate. Very important to make sure you get good adhesion when you're printing. You may want to do a few test runs to make sure you dial that in. I've not had any problems. Since I did some dialing in, it's been very good. Okay, what else do we have? So levels, print we'll come on to in a second, and we've got some other things here in terms of continue. Continue is a function which this printer does. We'll show that in a minute in terms of doing a power off scenario and doing a pause and continue scenario. And then we've got settings in terms of moving the filament in and out to change the filament if you need to do that. In terms of printing, once you've sliced your file and put it onto a USB stick, you just go to print and then you search for it. So what I'm going to do in a second is print the robot file, and once that robot file has been loaded, it'll just say, do you want to print it? The answer will be, in a second, yes I do. So here we are. I haven't modified these prints in any way other than for this pinning tray. I put this on a brim, which is where this is a brim for the pick handles you saw earlier, and this is essentially just an extra little bit of support to stick it down. But other than using a brim and removing it, which is just as easy as peeling it off, I haven't really done anything else to this design. This design was, I was given permission to show this in the video by Red Cat Imaging, my friend Foxy over at Red Cat Imaging, and he let me use this design on this video for Banggood, so thank you very much, Foxy. This isn't actually to scale, so I was actually practicing two things with this particular design. One is its standard resolution, which I believe is 0.2 millimeters, and you can see that the layers are 0.2 millimeters there, with an infill of 20%, so it's actually very light, and this is scaled down by, I believe, 40% to, this is about 60%, maybe 65%, I can't remember, of the original size. So these were actually for plug followers, but they're too small for that now. But I quite like the idea of having a relatively small pinning tray, and I really like the design. So you can see here that, you know, the quality for a standard run print is pretty high. In terms of a high quality print then, and bear in mind these bits here are just supposedly breakaway supports, and they don't represent the quality of the print itself by under these little claws. But let's have a look at this. So this was at 0.1 millimeter, high resolution. And you can see that, again, this hasn't been, I don't know whether you can see there, so we'll get some focus on his body. I just want you to see if you can see how smooth that the back of this robot is. So, you know, we haven't got quite as defined lines as a 0.2 millimeter print, so you can see the sort of difference there already in terms of quality. In terms of it being able to print the overhangs on its ears, very good, and the towers, there's a tiny bit of stringing, and you can see on his antennae, shall we say, but other than that, very good. Even the detail on the chest seems to have come out particularly well. So yes, I think from my perspective, especially in terms of what I'm going to be using it for, you know, printing off followers and pinning trays and doing other sorts of creative things, I think the print quality is, for a home printer, pretty high. By the way, it's sat on a raft, so this raft you would just peel off or use a craft knife to remove. You can see it's sort of peeling off if I do that there. And this is because I put the raft on because it's quite a tall structure, and I wanted to make sure that it had good adhesion for printing. So yeah, this is the kind of quality, and this was the first thing that I actually printed. You've probably already seen the print run on the video. And this would just be cleaning up by removing the support very carefully, because PLA is quite a strong but brittle substance. So remove this very carefully, otherwise you'll end up snapping his little claws, which wouldn't be very nice for the robot. But yeah, hopefully you can see I'm not trying to hide it. I'm trying to show you every facet of this, but I'm from my personal perspective, I'm genuinely impressed by the high quality print on this. I think that it's showing a good amount of detail for a home printer, especially for the price range. Looking at other types of things in that range myself in small amounts of research that I have managed to do. Okay, I'm going to now show you a couple of things regarding its features, its stop, start and continue features, and then we'll come back and talk about the overall things that I like about the printer. Two things I'd like to try. One is pausing a print job, and the other one is replicating a power failure. Neither of these things I really feel comfortable doing, because it just goes against every kind of instinct I have to turn off a print job halfway through. But do you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to the back, turn off the power, and then see if it resumes. So I've hit the off switch. Hopefully this would never happen in real life, but fuses blow. There are power outages. Things do happen. So would you lose your print job? Well, let's see. Just going to turn it on now. So I've got stop and resume here. So I'm just going to hit resume and see what happens. It looks like the heated bed and the nozzle still have to get to temperature. And once they are both at temperature, we should see it resume. So it looks like it's now at the 190 and 60, and yeah, we've got a print resume job there. Wow, I don't know if I was expecting that or not, but it did happen. Okay, so this is brilliant. Let's try seeing if we can pause it for a second. So it pauses. We've got the options here of extrude, move and change, and some more options there, but we don't want to extrude anything or move it or change the PLA, so I'm just going to hit resume and see if it resumes from that point on too. Wow, yep, it just seems to work as it said it would. So to me that is really nice to have those fail safes and the ability to actually pause a print job. So I'll let this carry on and we'll have a look at the final pinning tray at the end. So I think that concludes my review of this JGAURORA 3D printer, the A3S model. I hope I got into enough detail around the setup, the price, the specifications, the print quality, how you'd use the interface, run a print, the software it comes with, all those kind of things. I really hope I've given you enough detail to make your own mind up about this printer. However, I would like to give my own perspective on this. I've used it a number of times now, and I printed out some stuff, and the things that I like is the price is, I think, very, very good for a printer which essentially can be out of the box and up and running probably within half an hour for an experienced user, as long as their PC can load the software fast enough. I think that I love the look of it as well. I think it's a really nice modern design. I think the print quality is pretty good actually. I think for the price range in particular, the kind of quality of the print that you get out of it on its highest settings especially is really, really good. There you go, put the little robot there. I can see myself using this in the future. It was very easy to use. The interface is very good. So I think this actually comes quite well recommended by myself. Things to think about are In terms of the interface itself, the touchscreen isn't quite as responsive as, say, a modern smartphone. Whether that matters to you or not, I don't know. It doesn't really matter to me because, as you saw me use it, it wasn't difficult or hard, but it's maybe not as responsive as you'd expect. Other than that, I don't really have much criticism of it, truthfully. It just seems to work as you'd expect. It comes with all the software that you need. All I can say is it's worth checking out. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that review. I probably won't be doing many videos on 3D printing in the future, but you might see some of the outputs of my 3D printing. Okay, I'll see you next time.